Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome colleagues to our webinar, Voice Matters, building awareness of how voice can have an impact on your teaching. My name is Costa Constantinou and I am the Director of Educational Services at Veema Education. Taking part in this webinar are teachers not only from here in the UK, but from India, Kuwait, Kenya, Emirates, Cyprus, Egypt and Madrid. So a warm welcome once again from all of us at Veema Education. It's a great pleasure to be hosting this webinar with my colleague Alexandra Charalambous, our literacy, SEND and voice coach consultant at Veema Education. Alexandra is a teacher trainer, university lecturer and voice expert. Her expertise is in coaching both new and experienced teachers on how to deliver high quality phonics teaching. She has over 10 years classroom teaching experience and has worked with the British Dyslexia Association and the Helen Arkell Dyslexia Centre to develop the spoken language and imaginations of Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 pupils and enliven her literacy lessons. Alexandra uses drama techniques to help practitioners to develop stronger and more effective vocal abilities. Alexandra uses a range of exercises and also offers advice on maintaining a healthy voice throughout a teaching career. Her engaging, interactive style ensures that those who attend her workshops not only acquire a better voice, but also a wealth of ideas of how to use their most powerful tool. This introductory webinar aims to highlight how important our voices are, and in particular in the classroom. We will explore what an ineffective voice is and how it can disengage the students we teach and identify what makes an effective teaching voice. Alexandra will talk through the lesson aims in just a few moments' time. There will be some time for questions at the end, everyone, so please do send them through to me and we will take them in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Any questions we don't have time for, please do send them across by email and Alexandra will get back to you with some valuable suggestions and practical advice. So I think it's now time for me to stop talking and pass you over to Alexandra. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you, Costa. I am delighted to be part of the international CPD program for Veema Education and bringing Voice Matters internationally. Welcome, everybody. Really nice to hear from people all around the world and reaching this Voice Matters, which I think is a very important agenda, very important message for teachers to have in terms of building awareness of how voice can have an impact on teaching. Just a little bit more about what we're going to have over the course of the next 50 minutes. Going to cover lots of areas and I will go through the aims, but there'll be time for you to hopefully reflect on some of the points I'll be making and perhaps have a go in your own space wherever you are, have a go at some of the exercises I'm going to talk through too. So just a little bit about how Voice Matters came about. As Costa said, I work for Middlesex University as the primary English lecturer, and observing trainee teachers in schools made me realise actually that there needs to be a greater emphasis on how to use your voice in class teaching. And just a couple of the trainees that I worked with, I noticed one particular student had quite a meek voice, very mild, timid perhaps, and also a little bit monotonous. And I provided her with a bit of one-to-one coaching just to ensure that she could have greater depth to her voice, greater expression, tone and variety. And she was working with quite young children in Key Stage 1. And likewise, last year I worked with another trainee teacher who had a very, the opposite actually, very loud, very dominant style voice in the classroom. I could actually hear him further along the corridor. And for him, he needed like greater light and shade, needed to kind of draw his voice back in. So again, he had some development targets to work on. So I hope you enjoy the session, and we'll have time for questions at the end, but we'll get cracking with what we're going to cover today. So these are the aims for Voice Matters. So we're going to raise awareness of the impact your voice has on your teaching. We're going to explore some vocal techniques and exercises to develop a good tone, clarity and pitch in your voice. We're going to explore the voice for positive behaviour management. and we'll have some ideas to take away today in terms of looking after your voice for career longevity, because I think that's also important, that we don't overuse our voices and push through when our voice is telling us to rest and stop. Okay, so just a little bit about today. This is really much an introduction to voice training and voice coaching. I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavour so that you can start making little changes really to your day-to-day teaching. But please just don't think that by the end of this session your voice is going to magically change within the 50 minutes. So it's more about an insight, and really the regular exercises that you will do will support you in developing your voice. So first things first, we're all individuals, we're all very unique. We all come from different backgrounds, we all have different social classes, we all have our own character, we all bring lifestyle, environment to ourselves, and that's what makes you and also your voice. So as an example, if you think about your family dynamic when you were a child, that can also demonstrate how your voice is. So if you came from a very loud, busy family, your voice may have to have been heard, and you would perhaps have a louder voice. Let's also think about our physiology, our own body type, our size. Generally speaking, a larger frame may produce a larger voice. Maybe somebody with a smaller frame doesn't have the whole physical dynamic to produce a particular voice. And thinking about our own lifestyle environment, so whether you're a smoker or perhaps you're not perhaps looking into your fitness and your health, that can also have an impact on your voice too. So what happens is our students that see us make those judgments within the first 30 seconds really of seeing us. So generally they look at the appearance, and the next thing is how you sound, and that's when they make those judgments about us. And likewise, thinking about our own emotions, so whether we're feeling rushed, nervous or anxious, that can also filter through into our voices, and therefore students can end up picking up on these cues, and they can sense whether the teacher's on edge or feeling frustrated, even anger. So they can really pick up on these cues, and that's what we need to try and be aware of, is what we're cueing in for our students. Okay, so I'm going to go through some facts that are out there. There's some research that shows, on average, it's the fact that teachers can talk for up to 70% of each lesson. That's 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, term after term. So that's a lot of talking. A high percentage of newly qualified teachers suffer voice loss after only 6 to 8 weeks in the job. And that's also because there is not enough training or information out there for new teachers on how to manage and protect their voices. Teachers are 10 times more likely than other professionals to find themselves as patients in a voice clinic. I think that comes second to professional singers. And this is an interesting one, that older and experienced teachers can also encounter problems as the voice can change and be susceptible to years of strain and hormone change. So again, your voice can change after a number of years of teaching. And research has shown that an ineffective voice can produce disaffection amongst sections of pupils. And this is the one that we're going to focus in on our next slide. So, there's our fact. I just want you to take a minute to think about what kind of ineffective voice lends itself to a child to be disengaged in the class. So what sorts of voice may produce disaffection with students? I'll give you a moment to think of that. So, shall we take a look at some of the the voices that we should be avoiding. Here we are. So, did you think of a monotonous voice? So I mentioned that earlier with a particular trainee teacher. So lacking expression, not able to have a variety in the highs and the lows in terms of pitch. So a quiet voice, timid, not able to project, can't be heard from the back of the room. A voice that is at the same pitch or volume, either too loud or too quiet. We might have some shouty voices because we feel like we need to be heard, so we overcompensate and really have a loud voice in the classroom. Some of us may talk too fast, and then you end up tripping over your words, you garble. Again, that can also disengage our students. A shrill type voice, pitch too high, again, especially when we're teaching younger children, Key Stage 1, we might find that we need to pitch our voice higher to sound like the children almost. Again, that can be, if it's pitched at the same pitch almost, children can switch off very easily. What about a mumbling voice? So not actually opening your mouth, articulating clearly. Often we might get so engrossed in what we're teaching, we forget actually we have an audience in front of us, so it's important that we are heard. Hoarseness and raspy, that can be from a leftover cold, or if you're breathy, just having that awareness there. And now we're looking at a little bit about impatient tone and a sarcastic tone of voice. And again, your older students will certainly pick up on those tonal voices, which we will go into further along. So, let's have a think about your own natural pitch, where your voice is at currently, and just going back to the previous slide, we know that a thin, maybe a high-pitched voice can lack a little bit of authority. It can seem to students that, oh, this teacher's lacking confidence in what she's saying, he or she is saying. So thinking about finding the right pitch and making those subtle adjustments is what we're looking for. So what I need you to do to be able to find your natural pitch is start with the breath. So you're going to take a couple of breaths in. And then what we're going to do is make a natural R sound. So whatever initially comes out for you, that's your natural pitch. And I will just quickly demonstrate for me. I'll take a breath in. Ah. That should be my natural pitch. And to get a bit of variety in your pitch, what you can do is with the R is raise it up and raise it down the scale to demonstrate how you can have a bit of flexibility and how your voice is a bit of an instrument actually, and you can do lots of different things with it. So raising it up, and then bringing it down. Just a couple of little exercises that you can do to find your natural pitch, and then play around with going high and low. Subconsciously, we tend to pitch high when we're talking to students, but finding those moments where you can pitch at the lower end of your scale, so to speak, is very, very useful and very handy, and we'll talk about that when we get to behaviour management. So what do we need to produce a good resonated voice? And what do I mean by resonated voice? That's the quality of your voice, the colour. If it was a colour, what would it be? It's about producing a good, rich sound. And that's got to come from your entire body, not just your throat or your mouth. Resonance is involving your whole body, including your chest, your diaphragm, which is what we're going to look at, and your nasal cavities. So all those things are needed to produce a good, rich sound. and also a controlled supply of centered breath, which is certainly what we're going to develop now. So, you heard me say the diaphragm. This is a dome-like shape right at the bottom of your lungs or your rib cage, and it contracts and it flattens when you take a breath. So we're going to see a little example of what actually happens from the physical part. But the breath will travel through this section here, which is actually known as the windpipe. That's a very technical term there, the trachea. That's your windpipe, and the air travels through, a flow of air is pushed through and exits your mouth. But to be able to use a good diaphragm, we need to exercise this area. We need to have some strong abdominal muscles to power the flow through the breath and through our larynx, through our windpipe. So let's have a look at the diaphragm use in action.
Diaphragmatic breathing is an effective technique that will stimulate relaxation throughout your body. On a flat surface, lie on your back with your knees bent. I do not place a pillow under my head, so my neck remains in a neutral position. Place your fingertips over your belly button. Inhale slowly through your nose so that your stomach expands against your hands. Next, exhale through pursed lips so that your stomach falls beneath your hands. The chest should remain still. This technique may seem difficult at first, but just keep practicing. I recommend 5 to 10 minutes morning, noon, and night. As it becomes easier, you can increase the time. The goal is to be able to do this in a seated and standing position.
Okay, so there you saw the diaphragm being used there. Obviously, she was lying on the floor with her knees up. That was just to demonstrate for yourselves there. But what you can do is very simply do that in a seated position. You can do that wherever you are while you're walking. But the use of that is to really explore how to breathe properly, especially when you're having to speak all day or project your voice. So let's have a look at the benefits of diaphragmatic breathing. Will actually also create a greater resonance in your voice. So as I said, you can produce a good, rich tone to your voice. If you are breathing in through your diaphragm, your voice comes from just below your belly there. You can protect your vocal cords and your larynx, so therefore we're not putting a strain there and speaking through our throat. You can sustain your voice for longer speeches, and supports your voice to be projected in large rooms or in outside spaces. So some exercises that you can do to develop what I would call informally is belly breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. It's just to breathe in for 5, and remember, you've really got to fill up the air in your diaphragm. Try to not raise your shoulders. Often when we think we have to take a breath in, our shoulders are hunched up. But really, it's about pushing the air out into your belly. And then you exhale. You can either exhale on a humming sound or a ma, me, moo. So that also incorporates a bit of vowel articulation as well. And the aim is to make a nice, rich sound where you can use in your day-to-day speaking voice too. I would suggest 5 minutes practice of that on a daily basis, and you will have acquired the skill of diaphragmatic breathing. It really is really short and sharp and really effective. Okay. Right, let's move on to diction and articulation. Why is this important? Why do we need to be heard? Well, we've got our young people of the future that are hanging on to our every word, and we need to be heard correctly. We need to hit our consonants. We are a model in the classroom. I think it's important that if you have an accent, that it's not about changing your accent, it's really enhancing your diction. So we're ensuring that we hit the ends of our consonants and we open our mouths and words are heard correctly from our students. So just some simple exercises that you can do is to massage your cheeks and your jaw, because we tend to carry a lot of tension in our jaw. We clench our teeth, particularly if we're nervous or anxious. So it's really important to give your cheeks and your jawline a little massage. It really loosens everything up. Yawning, it's an interesting one because it comes naturally to some of us, but it's actually very effective in opening up the back of the throat or the larynx. So you can pretend to do some yawning. It all comes out. Even just a stifled yawn really opens up and widens the back of your throat. We also need to loosen up the lips by doing a like a horse. Really loosens up, gets a little vibration going there on the lips. And another really useful technique is imagining you've got a big piece of chewing gum, pop it into your mouth and just chewing, moving your mouth into different directions. Great, enjoyed that. And then last of all, some tongue twisters. So that's really going to bring everything together. So I will show you some that you can go away and practice. Red lorry, yellow lorry is one. Red leather, yellow leather. And the key to these things is to repeat them over and over. So unique, New York, New York, unique. Unique, New York, New York, unique. That one I find from all my training sessions is the hardest one. That's the feedback I receive. And then we've got mixed biscuits, lovely lemon liniment. Lots of people tend to have difficulties producing the L sound. And last one, critique a critical cricket. So just think, what do you need to be able to do to articulate yourself clearly, or even to make these tongue twisters? Okay, so some of the things that I said before, hopefully you remembered. Obviously having to open your mouth, really over enunciate. Sounds a little bit strange, but the more you practice that, opening your mouths and making full use of your tongue. And varying your pitch and your tempo as well will support that. But the key is really to open your mouths and ensure you are hitting those consonants. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to have a go at some of those tongue twisters, and maybe we'll get some feedback at the end which one was the hardest. We'll put that question out to you. Okay, hope you had a crack at some of those. You heard me mention what resonance is and what it does. How to open those resonated spaces and where are they really? As I said, you've got your diaphragm, it's also a resonated space, and your chest. So quite simply, to be able to kind of liven those spaces up is just to beat your chest. I'm having a go at doing that now, so you might hear a little bit of vibration, and saying the word hello, hello, hello. And then I'm going to go down to my lower abs. Hello, hello, hello. Down to the side obliques of my body, my left side. Hello, hello. And my other side. And let's not forget the diaphragm. Hello, hello. So I really feel nicely warmed up now to support my resonated spaces down there, from my chest to my diaphragm. We also have resonated spaces in our face, so just where our nose is, that's called the nasal cavities. We also have resonance in our mouth and our nose, all those facial spaces. So saying king kong opens up those nasal cavities. And also making sound, so going from low to high, and then back down. So that's supporting my nasal cavities. I actually feel like I've opened up right now by doing these exercises. I can see a difference already. Again, humming or making the zzz sound, rolling down if you're standing up, rolling down to the floor, and same thing in plank position or in downward dog, either doing a zzz or a humming sound, really opens up those nasal cavities and enable us to make a nice rich tone to our voice. I undertook a lot of these exercises over the summer. I did some afternoon voice with Pilates classes, so that's where a lot of this has stemmed from. And I actually noticed a difference after four sessions with my own voice, and I felt like I dropped an octave after that session. So it really did make a difference. But it does require some time dedicated to be able to support you to make a nice sound. Okay, voice projection, and this is always an important one because we want to protect our voices. We want to be heard. We must make sure we're not shouting. But what do we need then to make a good sound to be heard from a distance? Often we might have our classes outside doing outdoor activities. We might be on playground duty. We may be in an assembly, or we need to refocus the class after a bit of group work. Or if you're generally talking to large groups in a large room, perhaps in an echoey room, that can also require greater voice projection. What do we need to do then to make ourselves heard? Well, we need to have a balanced alignment, and that comes within our core and our posture. So making sure we've got a really nice open body space, straight back, our feet are equally balanced on the floor, we've got nothing constricting our chest, our arms are by our side. Second thing we need is that controlled supply of centered breath, so using our diaphragmatic breathing. You can take a breath just before you start speaking there. And thirdly is the good resonance that we've just explored, and vowel shaping, so being able to articulate and open our mouths and make use of the vowel shapes we need. Also within that, we need to have a focus or a focus point in the space that we're in. So generally, if you're in a big hall space, you may have the clock at the back of the room. That would be a good focus point to have to project your voice at. So compare that to picking up a book or a text. Your eyes have to focus on what you see in front of you to be able to read. That's the same thing with what our voice needs to do. It needs to hone in on an area, and that's your aim, that's your focus point. So we're going to have a little practice at that now. We're going to do a nice short one to start with. So we're going to place our hand in front of our face there, about 30 centimetres away, like a ruler's length, and that's going to be your focus point. You're going to say the words, "I know my voice can reach further and further." Try that. Okay. The next thing to do is now pick a new focus about 2 meters away. So hopefully you can find somewhere in your room, wherever you are, 2 meters away, and we're going to repeat that phrase. And at the moment I'm looking at my door. I know my voice can reach further and further. Hopefully everybody has done that. And the last focus point now is twice the distance away. The same line, I'm actually looking right over to my down my hallway to the windows, and again I'm going to repeat the line. I know my voice can reach further and further. everybody had a go at that now. Hopefully you felt that with that focus point you were able to hit your target and you didn't feel strain. You were using your diaphragm to breathe in and produce that nice sound to the back of the room or wherever you are. Okay, hopefully everybody has had a chance to explore that. Let's move on to voice for effective positive behaviour management, and I've included the word positive because that's ultimately what we want our students to be. I think it's really key that we use positive language, we display positive attitudes and body language as well, hence why the word positive is there, which I'm sure you all agree. So what not to do, as the picture suggests, hopefully we will never need a megaphone. But as we know, it's not what you say, effectively, but it's how you say it. So our tone of voice is key. So we know how to produce a nice rich tone now, we've explored that. But thinking about the quality of the sound that our vocal cords produce, and that's often formed from our childhood days. So if we think about when we give our expectations of our class behaviour or a procedure or some instructions, generally we might modify our voice to sound firm and steady. We've got a particular message we want to get in, we've got some important information. So we keep a steady, controlled tone of voice. Doesn't necessarily mean loud, but it needs to sound clear and confident. So you might pace the way you're speaking and slow it down, slow down the pace rather than talking too fast and losing your message. Likewise, if you are feeling nervous or agitated, anxious about anything that's gone on before, you do tend to rush through your tone of voice and you lose your clarity, and that's when students start to notice that, our teacher's not on form today, here's our chance to do whatever we like. So what I want you to try and be aware of really is to force either slowing down to get your message, really having that confidence to communicate your message with a calm tone of voice. And likewise, when we want to engage our children or be enthusiastic and motivate them, if they're doing something fun and practical, you might want to lift your voice and raise the pitch, and they can see a bit more of a relaxed tone of voice. Perhaps we bring in some humour, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. So I'm just going to show you 3 different types of voices here: disappointed voice, teacher voice, and people voice. And I just want you to think about which out of those 3 is the most effective for some of your more challenging students who perhaps don't listen so well or display challenging behaviour. Which of those voices will build the best rapport or be the most effective? Just have a moment to think about those voices. Okay, so let's have a reveal then. It's actually the people voice, and I will explain what that means. So this was from a recent project on taking part in a school, really, observing teachers on a curriculum project. They focused on teachers' voices. And what came about is that the people voice, which is actually your normal day-to-day voice, how you talk to somebody next to you, colleague, is the one that generates the best rapport with students, particularly those hard to teach students who display more challenging behaviour. Now within this voice you can still draw the line with behaviour, expectations, and you can intervene if there's something going on, but you can still command authority as well with this people voice, what is known as people voice. So it's more of a casual, slightly informal tone that doesn't have the authoritative adult voice. So that's where we would hear the teacher voice. So that is, there's nothing wrong with your teacher voice. It is formal. It says that I'm the teacher, you're the student. But what might happen with some students is that they feel, you've got the power over me, or slightly more standoffish. And there is a place for the teacher voice, of course. But with those hard-to-reach students, that's where they start to feel again that somebody's trying to tell them what to do, and then they become retaliate with their behaviour. So, last of all, the disappointed voice, which also has a place and can work very effectively with very young children. This was obviously widely used in the schools, showing disapproval, suggesting that our students weren't on task. And what happened then with some of those students is when this disappointed voice was heard, the students actually became more oppositional, more defiant. So actually that tone of voice, that disappointed voice, doesn't necessarily have to be loud or aggressive, but it still had that impact on those students where it just did not work, did not improve their behaviour. And it actually was far more effective to take the people voice approach. So we're keeping it light, we can still command our authority, but we've got that more informal, calm, controlled voice. I think with those voices, it's just worth, back in school tomorrow, having that awareness, maybe where you're using those 3 different types of voices, or if you're going off to observe another teacher, maybe making mental notes to focus on the kind of voices that you hear around the school. Think about the impact it has on students. What does it do when you're managing their behaviour, the kind of voices that you're using? Okay, and body language, because without our voice, we need to have a body that goes with it. So just looking at these 3 stances, they perhaps signal some messages to our students. Just want you to think about whether you think they're positive or show any kind of negative areas. Would you say that this body language is open or closed? Think about the left, middle, and final one. So, as teachers, we have to be aware of our posture, and really it's really key, isn't it, in giving out some key messages. So, as the first image suggests, hands on hips. Our posture is, it supports us, doesn't it? Maybe having our hands on our hips, it supports our weight. And actually pointing, what does that do to our students? How does it make them feel? It's difficult if you don't know your students' names, if you're a teacher that's just covering a class and you want to get a response. But that sort of pointing finger can also be detrimental if it's not done well. Maybe an open palm is more effective. So what about our hands over our body? Let's go back to those images. Crossed arms. Yeah, certainly I think we'd all agree that that's closed body language. It's a little bit like, don't come close to me, I'm not ready to talk, or I'm busy. So it gives off those kind of signals. And there's our other hands and our hips, which also conveys a little bit more, I'm in charge, I'm in control. And again, giving out some sort of stay away attitude. So what we want to achieve is just, again, having an awareness of how we stand in the classroom. Do we slouch? Do we have our hands clenched? Do we tense our muscles? Do we have our head jutting forward? All those things give off cues to our students. We want to have open body language. We might even want to stand at the door as students enter the room and greet them and smile. So the key really is to stand strong and straight without any tension in your body, and that will create a nice calm aura for your students as they enter the room. I think that's key. It's the moment that as soon as they enter the room, you are there to greet them and welcome them in. We often, what we put out is what students mirror as well. So as human beings, if you were to cross your arms, your colleague might tend to do the same thing. So we mirror each other's body language, and being open, receptive to your students, they will do the same to you. Eye contact. Obviously, we make eye contact when we look at our students, we talk to our students, thinking about the power of your eyes, what you can do to engage your students without even actually talking. So non-verbal messages that we can convey with our eyes. So just the subtle raise of the eyebrows, maybe even the kind of slight angle of the head when we need to get somebody to refocus. And pausing, so just having that kind of wait time. Really effective when you're just waiting for something to stop. Holding really still, incredibly powerful. And as I mentioned before, the power of smiling. So as I said, we all mirror each other. If you smile, your students will definitely be smiling back at you. And we do forget to do that sometimes, don't we? We have to make sure we are happy and we're displaying that. So here's a list of other non-verbal strategies to signal positive behaviour approaches there. So I mentioned sort of eye contact and facial expressions, smiling and making use of gestures. So some hand signals that we can make, so thumbs up, open palms, settling people down with palm facing down. We can make use of symbols and visual images around our board to refocus or volume. Think about our proximity as well. So if we were to move around the room, what effect does that have when your students are working and you're behind them? Do you need to move to particular individuals to refocus them on their task? Use of signing, I've seen that being used quite a bit in schools, not particularly even for hard of hearing children, but it's just another alternative to give out a message, and it's a very useful strategy. Music, so deploying some music as your students come into class, or after a very busy activity, a nice calming piece of music, or even just as background music while they're doing a piece of writing. But just think about which of those do you confidently use, and which ones do you think you could start deploying in your class settings, in your classrooms? Okay. I've got a bit of a pioneer for behaviour management. I don't know if anybody's heard of Dr. Bill Rogers, but he's a real champion and a real advocate for positive behaviour management. He's an expert in his field. He's a former teacher. He's now an education consultant, works a lot in Europe. He's actually Australian, and he lectures on discipline, behaviour management, classroom management, and also stress and working with colleagues. He used to be actually a former parish minister, which I thought was quite interesting. I've got a clip to show you in a moment, but anything that he produces I really advocate, because he has got an incredible manner, a fantastic way about him that just controls the class, and he's got a really calm voice as well. So we can really learn from a lot of his approaches. He's written some fantastic texts as well on behaviour management. So definitely tap into it. I like all these clips. As I said, I haven't got time to show them all, but I will start with the first one, which is tactical ignoring. So let's have a look at Bill Rogers and what he talks about. So this is a non-verbal cue. We don't always need to tackle sort of that low-level disturbance. Let's try and think about some of that tactical tactical ignoring and see what Bill's take is on this.
Tactical ignoring is one small but essentially small part of the way you relate to young people who are often insecure in social settings, and so they will often roll their eyes, sigh, give you a 70-30 eye contact rather than a more sustained eye contact. And they'll appear sulky, they'll shuffle their feet, they'll frown. These are behaviours that often occur in response to a direction, like, hands up thanks. Michael, Shannon, come on, hands up thanks. So that when I say to two kids who are calling out, come on, Michael and Shannon, hands up thanks, and give a positive non-verbal and a verbal cue, as I take my eyes off those kids during a whole class discussion, I can see out of the corner of my eye one or both of them doing this. And all of that is what we tactically ignore because it's not the primary issue at that point. The primary issue is that we've addressed the calling out in terms of, come on, hands up, thanks, fellas, and eyes and ears this way. So what we tactically ignore is not the repeated calling out, but the sighing, the pouting the eyes, and the folding the arms that goes with it. And if you watch an effective teacher doing that, the rest of the class quickly cue in. They don't see it as unhelpful ignoring. They probably don't unpack it as tactically ignoring either, but they know that the teacher's in control of what's happening. None of these kids with what's happening in that tiny incident, of many of which occur in a busy lesson. So tactical ignoring is part of a whole repertoire of understandings about the way you relate to people. It's not mere technique either, it's part of the way you actually relate to a couple of young people in front of their peers. But it's an important skill, and we will look at it and the different contexts in which we use it. But the key part of it is tactical ignoring. That ignoring can be dangerous if it's not tactical.
Okay, so as you can see here on the right-hand side, there's tactical ignoring link, and you can see some of his other video clips, which are all around 4 or 5 minutes long, produced by Veema Education there. All really valuable to guide you in supporting some of those more challenging issues that we face in the classroom, but also some general management classroom day-to-day things. So I really advocate watching some of those video clips. And certainly that one that we've just seen has some really important elements there, that positive non-verbal cue, adding thanks to the ends of what he was saying. So really powerful there just to address students and turning it into that positive, that they are going to do it. You've said thanks, that it's going to happen. So focusing on that primary behaviour and not the follow-up behaviour is really, really key. So there's a few more video clips that I really, really do suggest you tap into, because both Costa and I think he's incredible. And I remember receiving a lot of his texts and his input on my own training many years ago. So linking into that is some of the language that we saw Bill Rogers use, and you'll hear him talk about some of these things as well. Focusing on really boosting learner self-esteem. So lots of our students might have lots of self-esteem or confidence issues, so lots of that encouraging language. So whether they say they can't do something, well, actually I've seen that you can do this, I'd like to see you try. You're really good at anything that you can do to boost some learners when they're lacking their motivational skills. Really, really supportive. So motivate our learners through our activities, through our delivery, encouraging them to always aspire and to be the best they can be. Focus on the positives that we've seen with our students. So if we have children that are talking in our classes, instead of saying, do not talk in class. We could say, oh, I can see you're nearly completing your work, or do you need help with that? Or if you shouldn't be doing that, let's turn that into a positive. I'd like to see you continuing with your learning. So avoiding the don'ts, the nots, you shouldn't be, why are you doing that? That doesn't end up anywhere either. We end up in a bit of a vicious cycle when we start asking why haven't you done this? So it's more about turning it back into the learning and putting the responsibility back onto the student. Being simple with our language as well is really key. Not bombarding them with too much information. Obviously we've got learners of different abilities, so some short, simple tasks are really effective. Simple language that can lead to our students to be more successful. And always having those high expectations in terms of behaviour. So whatever's gone on the day before, if there's been an incident, it's a brand new day the next day. Always ensuring that we give those students a suitable challenge as well. So perhaps some of those students displaying difficult behaviour might be because they're bored, or people are assuming that they're not able to achieve as well, but when actually they can. So continue to have those high expectations can really boost and encourage those difficult students. So really, really important, I think, is to address our language. I can't really emphasize enough about turning that negative talk into a more positive. So think about, again, in the future, what could you do tomorrow to turn your language into more positive speak? Okay, so voice care. We saw in the first research slides that new teachers and even experienced teachers can lose their voices at any stage in their career. I've seen many teachers who have no voice and continue to try and teach, but we've got to really be on the lookout for those signs. So hopefully we're all drinking water, or if you can have a bottle on your desk or somewhere that you can easily access some water, that's really, really key. A humidifier in the workplace, I think that's important in terms of having a bit of moisture in the air, or keeping the windows open, getting a bit of ventilation, because having that sort of dry air, and I know lots of you are probably working in very hot places, that can really dry out your throat. So, and even likewise, if you've got the air condition on blasting, that can also affect your voice too. So striking that balance, and a humidifier can support that. Seek medical support if problems persist. So if you're noticing some hoarseness, or maybe even a lump in your throat, don't ignore these things. If it's a continued problem, you're best to go and seek some medical advice. Allow yourself voice breaks during the day. It's difficult if you have session after session. But if it's possible that you can structure some of your lessons where you've got the students doing more of an independent task, or you've got your PPA time or covered time, that would allow you more of your voice break. Drinking hot water with lemon and honey, very, very handy, very useful. Again, good for your own health, but also for your throat. Getting enough hours of sleep. And that's also key to support your voice. And adapt your vocal delivery to suit the acoustic properties of your voice as well. Whether you're in a different space, you may be in a room that's got carpet and fabric on the windows, on the walls, that can absorb your voice. So being mindful of making those adjustments. So these are the no-nos. I won't go through them because they're very obvious, obviously, some of those, obviously. But cheese and dairy really is more about if you have got a long day of speaking, that can also cause a bit of congestion. I'm not saying avoid it completely, but maybe the day before. And if you are maybe a DT technology teacher and you're working with woodwork, some of those dusty conditions can also sit on your throat. So drinking lots of water there is important, because that can also affect your throat in the long term. Okay, so some subtle things that we can do day to day, having that awareness of maybe drinking some water, putting things in place, some of our breath control, all of these things will ensure a good career and a good voice for your career. If you want to explore some more support for your voice, got the Voice Care organisation there, web link, and the British Voice Association have got lots of support materials for teachers. We've also got the Health and Safety Executive site and some specialist language therapists here as well. I can also deliver group presentations or one-to-one or insect days. You can contact Costa for more information on that. And some books for further reading, really, if you want to explore more about how to use your voice, how to deliver presentations confidently and clearly, also about positive language. Some of those books there are very useful and very handy to tap into. Okay, thank you for listening. It's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour covering a range of areas there. But hopefully you've got some tips and ideas and things that you can start exploring, maybe some practical exercises that you can go away and start doing on a daily basis, and tapping into some of those behaviour management strategies too. And we've got time for some questions, so I'm going to hand over to Costa, who's going to hopefully see if there's anybody with a question.
Hello, thank you, Alexandra. That was really, really good, talking through us how we could protect our voices and also use our voices more effectively in the classroom and dealing with positive behaviour management as well. So I really, really enjoyed listening to some of those practical and handy techniques. So we've got a few questions from people that have come in. Alexandra, I hope you'll be able to answer some of these. So we've got a question here from Abdul, who says, thank you very much. Really interesting to hear some ways of protecting your voice. Abdul wants to know a bit more about voice projection in terms of he's looking for 3 practical things that he can do to project his voice more effectively.
Okay. Firstly, just to really explore that diaphragmatic breath control. So certainly explore that. It does take a bit of practice to get going, but if you can try and imagine your voice is coming through your diaphragm, it will be a better sound and it will be louder. That would probably be my first tip, is to use your belly breathing technique there. Do the focus point to be able to get your voice out to be heard. So have somewhere that you can look at in the room. Imagine that's where you've got to hit your voice at. So the back of the room there. And also, what's also key is making sure that your voice is almost at the tip of your lips. Sounds strange that you're using your breath control, but thinking about the voice is literally just filtering through your lips can support vocal projection. I don't know if that answers your question there.
I hope so. I hope it does for Abdul. And Abdul, if you would like to get in touch with us, and I'm sure Alexandra will be able to give you some more techniques or suggestions. We've got another question, Alexandra. This has come in from Geraldine, and she wants to know: has a student who displays tantrums, what kind of voice would be best to be executed and to use?
Right. Well, certainly a very calm, controlled manner. Yeah, certainly dropping your voice to a lower octave would be key. Really slowing down your pitch, because as I said before, they tend to mirror our own voices. So that calm, slow-paced voice should hopefully draw that child back into that moment as well. Yeah, so controlled and calm is really key, and try to go in your lower register.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexandra. We've got another question here from Rashma. Rashma is asking, say, if children with 3 years age do not listen to make noise, how do you respond to that?
Was that 3 years of age?
Yeah, age of 3.
Okay. There's always going to be the defiant toddler, isn't there? It's obviously very challenging. What can you do? Well, certainly sort of getting down onto their level. So bending your knees is key. Get them to look at your face when you're speaking. so that they can see the emotion, the seriousness of your own voice, your tone. Encourage them to do that. And again, yeah, just lowering your register and slowing down your pace of voice as opposed to rushing or trying to overpower them with your own voice. It's more about calm and controlled voices, really sort of slow and elaborate. So have little gaps between what you're saying to get them to listen. And bribery, rewarding them.
Rewarding them, yeah. That positive behaviour, really important. And like you said, Alexandra, I think, you know, a lot of our work around the behaviour management comes from Dr. Bill Rogers, who, you know, is fantastic at giving practical suggestions around behaviour management. Can I move on to another question, which has come from Anna? Currently has a few students who are disengaged in year 8 and wants to try some positive behaviour management techniques with her voice tomorrow. Is looking for maybe the top 3 things that you would suggest, Alexandra.
To engage, these were year 8.
These were year 8 and just feels that the class is not where it should be and slightly disengaged. Okay,
so with voice, again, it's not about sort of speaking over them or you know, trying to tell them what to do. It's getting them to think about what is their learning, so what have they got to achieve, and giving them the kind of the signpost of what to do. So in 10 minutes, I'd like to see you achieve this, and then you're going to go back and check. So you give them that little bit of independent time, and then you're going to go back and check and see whether they're on task, or by the end of this lesson, I want you to have, you know, done this X number amount of questions or a number of writing. So you're giving them that sort of time frame as well. So they've got those kind of milestones they've got to reach. I think that's also key. And yeah, so generally just be mindful of your voice, that it doesn't go into a shrill or a negative tone. Just keeping everything really calm and resonated, and that goes for kind of any other adults that are teaching these students. If you're all consistent with your approaches, I think that's key.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's about enough time that we've got for today. But before we go, thank you so much for taking part in today's webinar, and thank you, Alexandra. Such valuable information, I find, for us to hear and put into practice. We do have a lot of the articles, the references that we've made today during the webinar. They will be on our website, so please do look at our research corner. www.veema.co.uk. You will find lots of literature there, and also about the CPD packages and promotional offers that we have. I just also want to emphasize that our next webinar is Access All Areas, Making Every Child Matter. It's on inclusion and differentiation on Wednesday the 6th of December. I know that we've got it up on the screen right now, I can see. And it will be delivered by a teaching and learning consultant, Nina Jackson. And you can find out more about Nina, as well as all of us as consultants for Veema Education, on our website. And I think it's time for us to say goodbye. I look forward to welcoming you on the 6th of December. And do try out some of these techniques. They might not always work the first time, but try them again and again. And I'm sure, you know, you will just get there where you want to be. If any of you did miss parts of the webinar, it is recorded, and it will be on our website and sent to you. So I think that's enough from me. Goodbye for now, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.